Good evening, everybody. My name is Barb Halpin with the Boulder County Commissioner's Office. I am the staff liaison to the Emergency Services Grant Program Advisory Committee. Present with us tonight are 6 of our members. So we do have quorum, and I can see all of your names up there. So that should record along with this video. We don't have to do introductions. The date is May 13th, 2026, and we are starting at 6 p.m. This is the second grant review meeting of the spring search and rescue round. The first meeting was held in person on April 28th at the Boulder County Courthouse, and this committee made some preliminary recommendations that we are going to go over tonight, just to make sure we got those in the place that you want them to be. And then there were a few follow-up questions on a few grants proposals that you wanted some more information on. So I did go back to those organizations and ask them your questions, and I'll fill you in on those tonight. So one thing I wanted to share really quickly, I don't think that'll work. Let's go right to the spreadsheet where we landed 2 weeks ago. If we start at the top, the ones in green where it says has yes in the final category, those are ones that you had already decided on initially last in April. So I just wanted to make sure that this was in alignment with your thinking. I don't know if let me make that a little bit bigger. You've recommended full funding for these organizations: Boulder Climbing Community, Boulder Mountain Bike Alliance, Bryan Mountain Nordic Ski Patrol, Friends of Colorado Avalanche Information Center, Indian Peaks Wilderness Alliance, Inc., and Rocky Mountain Rescue Group, Inc. Does anybody want additional conversation or discussion on these? Or are we good to move forward?
I think we're
okay.
good to move
looks
forward unless
good.
anyone has comments. Yeah, thank you, Barb.
Okay. So that leaves us with 3 remaining proposals that you wanted some additional information on. Actually, one of them, the MSAR, was really just my clarifying an amount. So what the advisory committee offered last time we met was to pay for all of the fire extinguishers requested and half of the radios. The radios didn't exactly fall into half, but what I did is I cut that number in half, added a tiny bit of padding because they won't have the bulk discount, and made it sort of around $75,000. If that's acceptable, let me know and we can just move on from that one.
Yes.
Tried to capture the spirit of what you asked for. Okay.
I'll second that, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that really just leaves us with the Front Range Rescue Dogs. We'll start with them. You had already agreed that the $5,000 for their preventative materials was in line with where you wanted to spend money this time. There were some questions about the video series for $6,000, whether they have the marketing, enough marketing proposals behind them. Some of the suggestions were that their social media isn't very well, they don't have a lot of likes or followers, that they would need to bump that up for these videos even to be seen. The executive director and I talked for quite a while. What she said was that they would be working with the Colorado Search and Rescue Association, who has much greater reach, really, throughout the state, does a lot of promotions on its own. These videos would be helped to be developed in a way that they would share them, and that also the group, and I sent a flyer, let me just see if it'll switch over here. And I can't actually see what I'm showing. Can anyone tell me if you're looking at the flyer for?
Yes, we
Okay,
are.
okay. So the idea is that they put out stories. They are actively putting out videos and other. So the company that they'd be working with to develop the videos would work very closely with them and also would help them with their social media outreach. So still probably not where you want them to be, but at least there's some level of reach outside of their own limited scope on Facebook and Instagram. One thing you could do is you could say, you could obviously take this out altogether and say they're just not ready. You could fund it at the level they've requested, or you could even change that amount to maybe, fewer videos to start with, or you could even say, can they add in additional marketing and exposure, assistance for a little bit more money. So that's really the discussion here. The idea is that they would have a whole lot of really short videos that talk about hiking safely with your dogs, so that the hiker doesn't get into a situation where they're trying to save their dog or run after their dog and then they get stuck or they need to be rescued. It's kind of a team approach to the recreationalist and their dogs. There's the how to handle first aid for your dog in the wilderness. Trying to look if there's anything else. Yeah, that's about the information that I got. Does anybody have any additional thoughts on this?
So I have a quick question, and I don't know, I feel like I kind of get in this place a lot, but CSAR is it's the entire state. So are we funding something that is really a state oriented versus county level? Like I'm looking at their Facebook page right now, just in general, and it like I really feel like Ferd has the right idea, and I've seen those rescues and the dogs, and the heat and people not planning for their own safety, let alone their dogs, and I'm just wondering, like, is this just Boulder County specific? Are we okay with it going statewide? Does it matter? Maybe I'm just hung up on that.
No, I think you raised valid points there. Does anybody else want to follow up on that?
Isn't the idea that it's better if it's in Boulder, but at least they have to serve somebody in Boulder County? Is that right?
Yeah, this is a little odd because its reach could go beyond Boulder. But obviously the organization exists in Boulder. I believe that all of the filming would be on public lands in Boulder County. And of course, we do have a large population of people that are recreating with dogs. I know that's popular throughout Colorado, but I would say that we're probably amongst the, sorry, I'm just letting in one more member, the higher end of people coming to our public lands with dogs throughout the state of Colorado.
Yep.
Hi, Cynthia.
I guess so. For me, it kind of feels then that partnering with like Boulder County Parks and Open Space, City Open Space and Mountain Parks, I don't know. It just kind of feels like if like they are definitely they work with Boulder County people, but is this going to benefit CSAR more than, you know what I mean? Like, is it a way to kind of get free something for the state? And I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just wondering if partnerships could go more local. I guess I'm not sure why they're not partnering more local. I mean, they could partner with the, Forest Service. They could there's even like El Dorado Canyon State Park. It just seems like there's some partnerships local. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's just kind of what I would like to see.
I'd like to second what Lynette said there. I mean, I was one of the ones that questioned what their social media strategy would be to see if there was even enough reach to justify the expense. And it's lacking. It's still, even on this second pass, lacking in its comprehensiveness. It seems as if they're putting all their eggs in one basket in terms of one partner. And to your point, that extends outside of Boulder County. There's a lot of local partnerships that they could strike that would benefit the community more in terms of being able to get the message out here in the communities in which we serve. Having said that, I mean, I do think that the content is worthwhile. I do think that it's very relevant for Boulder area, and it will hit Boulder County and extend further. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But I do think that there's a lot of missed opportunity, and it wasn't really the reply, the comprehensiveness of a reply that I was hoping for.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
just
Ben.
to piggyback off that briefly, like the CSAR skimming through that flyer, they were talking about Kelso Ridge rescues and stuff, you know, things that are out in Clear Creek County and kind of the more broad reach. If this said, you know, they were going to partner with Boulder County Sheriff's Office as a great social media presence, and if they were going to integrate with that, you know, that would be something that I think could convince this committee. But at face value, I'm not seeing the direct, they're not giving us a direct line to what the Boulder County impact might be.
I mean, I missed the last meeting. I'm sorry about that. I was out of town, and
Glad you
I'm-
could join us
I'm a-
tonight.
good to be back. And I'm a little ambivalent about this one, but if the group likes them, could you give them the money and say, here, we're funding you, but we really expect you to do this with it. You know, we really expect you to focus specifically on Boulder County. And instead of asking them or waiting for them to come back and say, we're going to do Boulder, say, we'll do this but you have to focus on Boulder. Because otherwise we could end up in this cycle with them where, you know, we keep waiting for something that they don't quite give us because they either don't realize it or I don't know.
What would that look like? Would that entail very, like, as they're talking, saying, we are in Boulder County, here's some very popular trails that people come with their dogs. These are specific. I mean, the
Well,
focus
I
on
was
Boulder
thinking-
County.
I was thinking more somehow or other, and I am the last person to understand this. Somehow or other, they target Boulder County social media so that predominantly, so that we know that they really are. I don't care where they film it. I want them to serve Boulder County people, and maybe they take out ads in the local paper, or they, you know, advertise somewhere, or they hit the social media within the local region so that it is really benefiting the local community as opposed to the whole state. I'm not opposed if people in El Paso County use it, but I like most of the attention to be here.
Yeah, so that's a really great idea. They could even do some paid social media to get more followers and have this more visible. Lynette, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so I think kind of building on that, I think what I would like to see is for them to come back with commitments from City of Boulder Open Space Mountain Parks, Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Vinny would take this and run with it big time.
Yeah.
And I could see
Yeah.
it being really fun, and they could probably get the canine unit involved. I mean, there's like a lot of potential here. And honestly, for mostly, I mean, I don't know for sure, but mostly they do respond to Boulder County stuff. You know, Sanitas, I mean, the dogs, you know, I've seen Sanitas and, you know, up in Fern Canyon, and, you know, just those are the places. And if they're going to video there, it is likely that they might have to have a permit as well from that agency. So why not talk to them anyway? So I just sort of feel like this has a really great potential, and yes, it could piggyback on the state and just whatever, but I just really personally would like to see more of a combined effort with local agencies, because those are the trails, those are the places where those dogs and the dog owners, and just City Open Space has around 8,000 followers on Facebook. The sheriff's office has a lot. Boulder County Parks has a lot. I just sort of feel that's sort of, and you want, I mean, FERD also goes to like, they used to, you know, like fundraisers. So you get your face out there in the local area. Of course, people are going to be like, oh, I've got $50 to give to somebody. I'm going to give it to them. I don't know. I just sort of feel like kind of what Jody is saying. I think I'd kind of like to see a little more specifics around their plan.
Yeah, these are all good, really good suggestions. And somebody last time, you know, I think a bunch of you talked about, could they be doing more with their own cameras? You know, they're out there with a cell phone, just do something quick that they, you know, kind of what Vinny's been doing. Vinny is the PIO for the sheriff's office. You know, you don't need an expensive consulting group to just take your iPhone and say, hey, we're out at the fair today, and you know, we've got some of our dogs with us, come on down, or, you know, this is what we do with them, and this is the training we do. What would a win look like? I mean, given that we have to make a decision about this spring round, am I hearing that you want them to come back with a more robust request a year from now? Or am I hearing that there's still some room for this committee if they enhance their proposal, if they talk to those agencies you talked about, City of Boulder, Boulder County, Sheriff's Office, for open space groups, that's where I'm kind of lost in terms of leading the discussion here, is what are they, can they get there in the next 2 weeks? If I take, you know, my goal is to try to take a recommendation to the commissioners on June 2nd. Or do you think that they need to kind of go back and bake this in a little bit better in terms of a, you know, a full recipe to bring to you? Did you want to say something, Cynthia? Just jump in.
So, you know, it's a challenge because it's not our job to write these grants for them. Sometimes I would like to. But, you know, we have the money, so it's not really a question of, you know, are we so tight we couldn't grant them the money? The thing is, it's our Boulder County tax dollars, not Clear Creek or El Paso County. And so I think we have to drive that point home to them of that's why we have this money to give. And clearly we want to be giving it to groups that are doing good work out there. And so it, you know, the question I guess I would pose for the group is, and I don't want to be too harsh about it because we have this money we can give them. This is not, they're not asking for that much. And so the question is, do we reward what we see now and say, you know, here's what we want to see in the future, but we will grant you this request because we like the idea and we'd like to see you come up and start working with other agencies and really get yourself, you know, firmly centered. And if you look at social media, everyone starts with crappy videos and they work their way up with better equipment. That's just what you do. I mean, I'm not a social media influencer, but like that's where you start and then you buy more, better equipment. But the question for the group is, you know, do we want to reward them now with grant money and say, you know, we see your potential, we believe in you guys and keep going, do better for us next year? Or do we want to say, contingent upon this grant request as a requirement of this grant, is that this is benefiting Boulder County, period, point blank. Nothing else really matters, you know, and it's not a question of whether we like your idea or your group or any of this, but like, is it meeting those qualifications? And so if it isn't, can you show us in 2 weeks that it does? Or do you want to come back to us next year? And then I would just, you know, whatever the group decides on this, I'll go with.
Go ahead, Rick.
I think, you know, I was just reviewing the proposal and it's very modest. And I really get the feeling from it that the intent is to do things locally that could benefit widely, that their intent is to do it here, make it work, and then if there's value in it, share with the state and with other organizations. So I love what Cynthia just said. And I think based on the amount and based on, they've been going since 1984, they work hard, and, who doesn't love dogs? And if dogs can save just one person, planning a little bit better, then I say it's well worth the money.
Okay. Well,
I
we've
think-
got
Oh,
Jody.
I was just going to say, I don't disagree with any of this. I think short of writing a social media plan for them, we could at least say to them that, yes, we need the viewership to be primarily focused on Boulder's community, Boulder County, and that we recommend partnering with local agencies and give them some breadcrumbs, right? Like if we just say like, hey, it's not a lot of money, like who doesn't love dogs, do better next year, and we'll give this to you. That's not really education for them. And so they're probably no more likely to come back with a better proposal next year. We could at least give them a little bit of education and some breadcrumbs. Like these types of local agencies, we think this, and this, almost any one of the agencies that's on our grant list right now, and then some, and say, we suggest that you reach out to them and ask if they would share your organic content on their page. Start striking those conversations. At least just lead them along so that they do better next year.
I second that. Well said. That's kind of what I was thinking and trying to say. Like, I would support that.
Yeah, I wish I could have said that beautifully. Nicely done. That's right. I mean, it wasn't just about liking dogs, and there's a lot of dogs. I mean, sorry.
No, I love dogs too. I get it.
I was for it too, Rick. You know what I mean? But really, like, I would love to see them succeed. Please create a program that's so great that it's a model for the state. This is the perfect place to do it in. Like, and I don't know how many rescues I have seen in Boulder County and read about that include dogs. Like, it is a prime place where thousands of people are coming from the Midwest and decide they want to climb longs with their dog. So, like, the more that we can, support that, I'm for it. But it's also like, exactly what Jody's saying about a little bit of education can go a long way, because we like what we're seeing. We want to see more of it. And, here would be our suggestions from the group.
Great. Let's give them the money and give them direction on how they should be focusing.
Yeah. And Barb, if you would like me to write a little blurb for direction for you to pass along, I'm happy to do that. I mean, this kind of falls in my professional
I know you're serving your
world
specific
anyway.
role and position really well. Why don't I'll type something up, and if you wouldn't mind reacting to it and adding to it, that would be fantastic, Jody. I
Sure.
appreciate that, and certainly your professional help on this would be greatly appreciated. So I'm gathering kind of this consensus that we are going to, you want to recommend funding that extra 6,000 with recommendations that they do more to build their social media, build their network. We have plenty of organizations just on our list alone that they also know that they could start with. And that is a really great way to kind of cross-pollinate those messages. And I think just the present, so as we know, a lot of people come and they use our open space, but they're not necessarily from Boulder County. But most people, if they're coming to an area, they're going to do a little research. They're going to say, ooh, what are the trails that are popular? And so if those videos can be out there in the Boulder County, not government, but all of the organizations that provide information within Boulder County, then we're likely to capture those people that don't live here, but are likely to come and recreate here, including those folks that bring their dogs across the country. So is that kind of what the takeaway?
Yeah, and that what we would love as a board next year is to see another grant from them when they're integrated with, like, we would love to see that integration in next year's grant request, when they come back to us. Like, we would love to see more of that work together. We'll anticipate seeing that in your grant next year.
Yeah. I mean, this does make for a nice pilot of something of this nature, and I do think that the groups that they potentially are working with, even in creating the content, can maybe guide them too. But really, it is just simple. I mean, I reach out to the sheriff's office all the time. Hey, can you post this for me? You know, and vice versa if they wanted to get it to the commissioner's office list. So, you know, that is how we roll. So I think that that's not an unreasonable ask, and I think it's a really good one. Is there anything more that anybody wants to say on this matter? Okay, thank you for that. And Jody, as I say, I'll type up something basic, and then if you don't mind embellishing it, I'll include that then with the recommendation. Okay, let's see, where are we? Well, first I'm going to see if I am able to play a video. It's going to be like a substitute teacher day. Most of you probably caught this firsthand, but this is the rescue in El Dorado Canyon back in March, I believe. And the big thing in here is how BES used its drone that you all funded a year ago to save these out-of-towners. Are you hearing that? Get the volume up. Okay, so I shared that because it kind of, whoops, hold on.
It would have been
Okay.
great if they said, if you want to give donations to Rocky Mountain
Right.
Rescue.
Exactly. Now, as I say, the story that we kind of know from the background in that, so Rocky Mountain Rescue got the whole fame for doing that rescue. However, that drone, and this is my follow-up conversation with Boulder Emergency Squad, which is the next proposal on our list. What they shared with me was that these drones, they could actually give first aid and through a microphone. So the drone was able to stay there and very stable, as you could see, which and shine light because it was after dark. So shine light on those climbers that got stuck. In addition to that, it had a microphone, an outgoing, both two-way microphone. So the drone people could say, it's going to be okay. You know, your rescuers are on their way. You know, don't panic, stay calm. Are you in a comfortable spot? They could have a dialogue in a place where it was going to take that long for RMR to get there and drop down. And then as the rescuer talked about, he was able to drop down right where they were with the help, because the drone and, you know, was able to say, you're just a little to the left, you need to come a little right, that kind of thing. So that was the real use of equipment paid for by this grant program.
So the real
And
heroes here, folks, are all of you.
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I mean, that it's really nice to see, you know, in action. You know, I think it's very satisfying to say, you know, a year ago, there was a lot of discussion because it wasn't an inexpensive request for all of that drone equipment. But there it was, you know, and used exactly how we would hope and it was intended. Now BES is being asked more and more to bring that equipment. So RMR is sort of the primary agency for people stuck on the mountains, just like those climbers, or if they're hikers lost or hypothermic, you know, all those kinds of things. But BES now is being relied on to come to those same calls to use this drone equipment. So that's some nice coordination. It's not like BES is only using it for their calls. They are using it for any call that it could be advantageous to have. So with that, I wanted to move to the last proposal that was kind of left with some questions. So with the Boulder Emergency Squad, where this committee got was that the request was a budget buster, that the full $399 went over the amount of $500,000 that this committee has for this spring. There was some consensus that the volunteer reimbursement program of 40,000 and some, we're just not ready to implement that. It sets a precedent. It's, you know, if you start paying some volunteers, then they're no longer volunteers, and how does that all work? And other organizations are going to want the same thing, and that really this grant program is not in a position to start a stipend or a reimbursement program for things other than, you know, can you give them safety equipment? Can you give them the right PPE? Can you give them radios for their trucks? Maybe some mileage reimbursement. This committee's funded that before. But direct payment to volunteers to serve a shift steps outside of sort of the scope of this committee, and also that is a bigger dilemma I think all volunteer agencies are struggling with. So that was sort of one that was decided would have had difficulty even passing through our legal team in terms of, does it meet the ballot language for this tax? The rescue vehicle down payment was removed. Again, partially paying for something when they don't have the extra money to make it whole felt like too big of a risk. That there could be, you know, you're putting a down payment down, but then who's going to come up with the rest of the money? That question wasn't answered. And the e-bikes, kind of nice to have, but again, when you have to take something away, that was one of the things determined to probably not make the list. So where the committee landed was that the feasibility study was the last big question. This 253,000 includes that feasibility study, but this is what I went back and I talked to the executive director of BES about, because the question from this group was, okay, if they determine that they can expand and how to do it, you know, their layout is very tricky. They've got a very narrow slice of land that's stuck between the railroad tracks and diagonal Highway 119. So they can't expand east or west. They can do a little bit of expansion north and south. And the question was, where would they get the money? If they get this plan that says this could work, who would pay for that? And they were very honest and said, well, we'd come back to the grant program for that money. Now there's no dollar amount attached to it yet, 3 to 4 million. I'm just guessing, could be more, could be less. You know, the spring grant round can't sustain that level of request. However, they wouldn't be limited to asking this committee for grant money. They could take this to other, you know, a capital fund, a state capital fund. There's other parts of the emergency services tax. Once the RMR building is completed, maybe there's some money left over to help BES. None of that is promised. None of that is in any way determined to be true. They would have to go through a process just like this. So the question for this group is, are you willing to recommend the 140,645 for them to at least determine what they could build on their site and how to maximize their space, given that they would also move in FIRD, which is the Front Range Rescue Dogs, MSAR, which is the Mounted Search and Rescue, and I believe it could be BMA. I think it was maybe it was Bryan Mountain. I think it was Bryan Mountain, that all of those groups, which are essentially run out of people's homes, could have space in that facility, so they could co-coordinate response and that kind of thing. So not a whole lot more, but I think the main question was, where would they look for the money to build? And frankly, this is an area they would come to. Go ahead, Harry.
I don't like it. And I know you have to do the.
Okay, I've seen nodding of
feasibilities-
heads, but
I know you have to do the feasibility study, but it's, you know, if you make it binary, they do this feasibility study and they decide they can't do it, you really don't have anything to show for this.
I'm so sorry, Harry, my volume got down. Can you repeat what you said?
Oh, my concern is, you know, I know you have to do a feasibility study, but if, and it's not really, but I'm going to make it binary, that what if you get an answer back that says, no, you can't do this, then you really have nothing to show for this. And that was an awful lot of money to spend to find out you couldn't do it.
Or
I
if
think-
the answer is
Yeah.
like they got to spend $3 million to do it, and then their response to that is, well, then we're going to just keep asking this grant committee for that. I don't think we're setting up a proper long-term financial success here.
I'm seeing some noddings of heads.
Yeah, I don't feel like this grant is a budget plan. You know, like planning for a budget for next year. Oh, there's a grant. We'll just, you know, it just feels kind of icky.
Anybody else wanted? I'm again seeing some noddings in agreement. Ben, as chair, do you want to propose something that people can react to?
Yeah, I would propose that we do not fund the 140K and $635 feasibility study. It doesn't appear to this committee that it was a shovel-ready, tangible item that when we fund it with Boulder County taxpayer dollars, it will yield improvements within the next year, which I think is kind of what we're looking for with this committee.
Thanks for
Are they
that.
sure they don't need a few radios? Because that's always easy.
They do. That was actually part of it. If I go back.
I agree with
get-
Ben, and I think taking it back to that language is really, really important. Because, you know, I used to do, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I used to do building permitting for the town of Netherland for almost 10 years and land use. So everything that was running up to Ned came through me. I didn't make those decisions. I was just staff preparing all of the materials and writing all the minutes and everything as they went through all this process. And I mean, this is a existing organization, so we're not afraid they're gonna, come and scram, but their plan is to keep coming to us. And obviously, we're big funders for them and Rocky Mountain Rescue. And they know that, and we know that, and we keep doing this every year. And I don't think we have a choice, it seems, as we've had these conversations annually. It seems like this is kind of what we're gonna expect. Which, so we can anticipate we'll continue to get big grant requests from these guys. But this pathway to trying to do their building, I mean, what are we gonna look at next year for a spring grant? Same amount, 500,000? They're gonna come back and ask for 9/10 of it again? And I love the idea of them being able to put someone in the building. But I do think, as was initially said, if this, if they're putting all their eggs in a basket and then the feasibility study says, yeah, that's not it, we're not going to have anything to show for it in a year. And obviously we're not incentivized to build it in a year. They are. So they should show us that.
I kind of feel like this is part of a bigger issue that I think the kind thing to do would be to educate some of these agencies on what we do really want to fund and encourage them to apply along those lines and say, hey, look, these are the things and the amounts where you're pretty likely to get a grant. These are the things and the amounts where the committee is just always going to have trouble. I don't know if we can do that, but I always feel badly that they put in these proposals that we look at and go, no. And somebody put a lot of time into it. It doesn't mean we should fund it, but I hate to see them keep banging their heads against the wall if we know something that they don't.
So that does beg an interesting question about right now. I don't know that this is going to change from one season to the next, from one spring to the next. Essentially, we could continue to look at the similar amount of money of 500,000 each spring. There could be an adjustment where there's a recommendation either from this committee or staff or the commissioners that says, do we want to forego that amount and increase it for 1 year, or maybe increase it for 2 years so that it's more substantial? And those are tough decisions because, as we know, I mean, we got a bunch of smaller requests, and then we got some medium requests, and then we get, this much larger one from a group that the county is relying on quite a bit. I mean, BES has taken over more territory and goes on more rescues than they used to. The sheriff's office said they're maxed out on what they can give BES every year. They have not increased that amount in over 10 years. It's $180,000 a year from the sheriff's budget. And I do think what you said, Harry, is absolutely correct. There is a much bigger issue here for improved infrastructure. Right now, this fund does not have what it takes to really rebuild a fire station or a rescue organization's building. With the exception of the search and rescue building being built for RMR, but half of this tax was designated to that cause. RMR did go out and talk, they put this ballot issue on they asked the commissioners to do it, but essentially this tax was created because RMR said we can't operate out of our building anymore. And taxpayers said, okay, we'll build you a brand new one. And that tax expires after next year. So for 5 years, they got half of the $9 million coming in strictly for their building. you know, BES could go out and say, okay, you build RMR this building. Can you extend this tax and give us one too? I mean, there's, whether that would pass or not, I don't know, but that is an option. Lynette, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I think like I take my role, I mean, I'm a county employee, I live in county, blah blah blah, but I take my role here pretty serious, in that I feel like we are being entrusted, even though the county or the public doesn't really know us, but we're being entrusted to be stewards of this money, right? And I do believe that BES does great work. They all do. It's you know, like when they come to us, they all do. But I think we ultimately have ethical dilemmas, like all kinds of different dilemmas that go into deciding this. And, you know, it's like knowing that this tax is going to end. I was going to say that that video of the drone and the rescue is a great example. Yes, we did that. We gave them the money, but the taxpayers actually did that by approving this grant. So being able to put back to the taxpayers and say, you approved this tax and now look what it's done. You know, I think as a taxpayer, I feel good about that. I don't know that I feel so good about, you know, feasibility studies that may or may not, like what happens with that money. Again, if it doesn't, is it just money down a hole, and is it becoming somebody's budget planning? And I think it's maybe the state of the world and the way things are right now. Because I mean, look at what the county's doing. Barb your position, right? So it's like things are getting tough, and I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think if we have to say no, we have to say no. I mean, if that doesn't, if we don't feel comfortable with that, they can come back. Maybe it makes them be a little creative. How many people have we seen where we said, no, this doesn't feel right? Or if you tweak it a little bit and they come back and they've tweaked it and we're like, holy crap, that's great. So, you know, it's maybe BES can be a little more creative about what that looks like. But yeah, I guess if we have to say no about something or some part, I don't know. I kind of feel like being a steward of this money. I don't know.
No,
I
that-
don't
that's-
have any
no,
problem
that's
saying
great.
no to them. I just want to help them be more successful next time.
Cynthia, you've got your hand raised. Oops, you're on mute, Cynthia.
Something that Lynette said stuck out to me earlier. She mentioned like planning ahead in, you know, when you're writing or looking to apply for a grant. And I know that I saw that, you know, Ned, like grants would come up and they would do half-ass, you know, requests because they're like, oh my gosh, this came up, here's the date, we just have to go for this. And it's not the best way to plan. This is not a willy-nilly organization that we're a part of. It's been going on for a few years. Some of you have been part of it the whole time. BES knows that. But I get the sense somewhat from BES and some other grants that they just throw the entire kitchen sink at us. So like everything they can think of, and this grant was that, where it was like, okay, this feasibility study and volunteers. Oh, also gear and this and electric bikes. And so, you know, it doesn't come across as much as I think they are planning. Because they're putting, you know, they're putting a lot of effort and time into writing the grant, but they're just like gobbing everything they can get to create these really large grants. I don't know if you can say to them, Barb, you know, you might go to the commissioners as BES and point out your need and the challenges and the limitations that you have. This is something that RMR did, and see if we can extend this grant. That may help you guys achieve your goal and also extend this out. Obviously, wildfire and trail planning and search and rescue, these are very important, necessary things, and we're only needing these services more. So, you know, take your shot with trying to, I mean, is that something you can say to the organization of like, maybe it's time you guys, you know, seeing as you're anticipating, you know, they were telling you, yeah, we're just going to keep coming back to you.
I think I
So
would couch or position that as what you've requested really didn't meet the requirements or to think about how to say that, but the parameters of the grant program, that the needs you have are really greater than this grant program can fill. But there
shovel
are
ready, like
in
Ben
shovel
said,
ready,
shovel ready.
right. And I do think that with the sheriff, the commissioner, you know, they need to do some creative lobbying, I guess, for their needs, you know, to really be proactive. And I mean, I think that everybody's aware that they have these needs, but the grant program is just not able to meet those or to fund those. And so either the commissioners could change how the grant program, put more money into it. You know, the decision is every year the commissioners make a decision how much money goes into the grant fund. Or they could be asked to go to other areas, which we know are limited right now. Very difficult time for anybody to get money, but hygiene, fire department did that. You know, they're building the $6 million addition to their fire department. We're giving them a drop, 3% of that, a drop in the bucket, 186,000 and some. But they had to go out to the taxpayers and raise a mill levy. You know, maybe BES needs to figure out a taxing mechanism, knowing that's very difficult. But there are other probably areas that would raise the kind of money that they're looking to this grant program for. And in its current state, we just can't accommodate that.
Because it does come down to this, where we're having to make these ethical decisions about, is this legal? Is that, you know, is this a precedent? You know, so we're really trying to consider these grants at depth. And it's a drag when we have to be like, nah, you know, like it's great to be able to give these organizations what they need. And I'm sure that BS has probably needed that building for 20 years. As we've seen from some of these requests, you know, you've got old firefighting suits from the 70s, you know, for crying out loud. So it's obviously not a question of need. It's a question of, you know, having the funding, and if they can, you know, take that to the next step, so that we're not having to like comb the hairs of their grant and be like, well, we could do this one, because that feels a little frustrating, I think, you know, for us.
Yeah, I think all that you've said is true. You've all been in a very difficult spot these 3 years in really building we didn't start off with a lot of really clear cut parameters on this, other than the money that's available to us year after year. And I hear what you're saying about being asked these very true, you know, obviously we would love for everybody to have the newest, greatest equipment and the best buildings to store their trucks and their gear and to be able to operate efficiently and all that. But 4.5 million total a year, half of that which is in the grant program, is not going to get everybody there. Rick, you want to say something?
Yeah, and another point, I don't know if it's worth discussion. You know, a percentage of this grant money goes to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office is then turning around to these agencies like BES and giving them some money. I'm not saying this well.
Not out of this tax fund, though.
No, correct. But my point is, the SO is asking for more and more from these service agencies, and not raising their participation, their financial help.
That's true.
We're not the only ones saying no, we can't give you all of that. Every agency they're going to is saying, hey, we don't have enough to do all this, so they're going to have to be smarter and more strategic. Once again,
No, I won't argue with that. And these are very tough conversations to have, and I appreciate that. I'm hearing no great push to fund this feasibility study. Unless that has changed. Let's go back. Hold on, let me open this up again. Given that it sounds like this line item here, it's not letting me click on it, but I was going to put a strike through it. Do you want to recommend adding anything in or leaving it? Sorry, if I could get into this file, I would. There we go.
Or if you strike that, it takes their request down to 110, or it takes it down to
That's a good
253.
idea. 645. Then if you take this, you strike this and keep the other 3 strikes, then the allotment would be 113. You would end up allotting for this whole round 335,000, essentially leaving 164,000 to go back to the fall, to be pushed forward to the fall round. That's a perfectly legitimate recommendation. We can't go over 500,000, but you can come under it. Any strong feelings? Going once, going twice?
I say we carry it forward to fall.
Agree.
Yeah, I think 113
Yeah, I
will
agree.
go a long way for BES, and we've funded them multiple times as well. So their total fund from this grant pool has been substantial when we're comparing it. I think that's, this is money that's helping them open up their own funds for other things. This will go a long way.
And that is the opportunity they have, is if this grant program can pay for these other things, they might be able to reuse how they get the sheriff's amount of money to them. Knowing that they have to carry insurance. And I mean, a lot of what the sheriff's money goes to for all these organizations is, their insurance on the buildings, the really basic administration fees that come up annually. So this grant funding was seen as a really great opportunity for them to replenish gear and service out old vehicles for new. So yeah, okay. What I'm hearing then is that you've landed on a total recommendation of $335,189. The leftover amounts will be added to the fall fire protection district grant round. And I will write this up as I've taken notes today, and we will go ahead and fund the full FERD amount. Sorry, that will add just a tiny bit there, and give them some help with how to really make those videos successful and how to get them out into our community and with engagement. Look at that, 1 minute to spare. You all are amazing. Any follow-up? Any other last minute remarks?
You're amazing, Barb.
Oh, thanks. You guys are. Lynette,
You
wanna say
you are amazing, Barb. I also wanted to just say I appreciate everyone being willing to be vulnerable and having the conversations that we had tonight. I think that's really important, and everybody's opinions and viewpoints are valid, and I listen to each and every one of them, and a lot of times I'm like, oh yeah, so I really appreciate all of you guys as well.
Yeah, for sure. These are tough conversations, and you get through them, and you come out, I think, with a really solid place to land. So with that, we will close the meeting, and I will circulate a recommendation for you. I'm going to be out of town until next Tuesday, so sometime mid next week, you'll see my write-up and recommendation for you to all review, add any changes. And then that will, again, trying to get this on the commissioners' business meeting for June 2nd, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day week. So thank you again. It's another successful round, and you all get to go now and enjoy the beginning of summer coming up officially. It's been summer since February, but
Barb, when are we meeting again?
I'd like to try to keep the June meeting on the calendar, the 4th Tuesday of June. We'll see if we can get quorum, but I just kind of want to wrap up a little bit and talk about maybe some small tweaks before we jump into the fall round again at the end of August. So not mandatory, but certainly would be helpful if we could jump on that call, and then you'd have all of July off. So. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you all jumping on. It was really helpful.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.